This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in San Jose at the California Democratic Party Convention. We are joined by Elen Asatryan. She is the Executive Director of the Armenian National Committee of America Western Region. And I must start by asking, why is your organization here at the California Democratic Party Convention?
Of course. Well, the ANCA Western Region and the ANCA is actually a nonpartisan organization. But we are basically serve as the bridge between the community and elected officials and candidates.
Okay.
So therefore, the support of both Democratic and Republican candidates and elected officials is very important to us and our issues.
So we could expect to see you at the Republican convention, for example?
Absolutely.
So give me a sense, though, about your presence here, because I know you're nonpartisan, but polls do suggest that Armenians are trending more Democratic than Republican in recent years.
It actually really varies on the region. The ANCA Western Region office actually covers 19 states west of the Mississippi, plus Alaska and Hawaii. Out in California, I'd like to say that we have a very large number of Democrats.
Right.
But in places like Texas and Nevada and Utah, the Armenian community tends to lean Republican. So it really varies from region to region.
Right.
And when they came and what their life experiences were.
So tell me about when they came and how that impacts party registration to the extent you know.
Of course. Well, with any immigrant community, it's extremely difficult to get them to trust the government, especially when they're coming from places like Iran.
Or Armenia, that had been part of the Soviet Union.
Correct. So there's a process of learning and community education, and that's where the ANCA Western Region comes in. In 2012, we launched a program called High Votes, which is a voter registration and get out the vote effort. For the 2012 election, in about 2.5 months' time, we were able to register over 5,000 Armenians to vote.
Well, I got to say, what people know about the Armenian community in political circles is they vote.
Yes.
I mean, Armenians vote in disproportionate numbers. Why is that, in your mind? Why are Armenians in America so committed to participating in the process?
Well, I think it has to do with how passionate we are about issues and about making change. The Armenian Genocide of 1915 is a very important part of that.
I want to speak with you about that in a moment. But
of course. And so there are ripple effects to making sure that our community is civically engaged, to have those end goals, to have elected officials that are really listening in on what's important to us. And of course, voting and being a big voting bloc is a very important part of that.
Right. So here in California, I'm sure the community is proud, regardless of party affiliation, that George Deukmejian was the governor of our state in the 1980s.
Yes.
One of the earliest Armenian success stories in American politics, I think it's fair to say, is he? I'm trying to think. I think so.
Yes, he is.
But now we have two members of the legislature in California that are of Armenian descent. We have Elen Asatryan, who is a Democrat, Kacho Shajian, who's a Republican. I understand they're great friends, of course. And so what does it mean to the community that you do have members in the California legislature, one Democrat, one Republican?
You know, it makes things much easier. Easier in the sense that, especially when it comes to the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, as well as the Armenian Genocide issue, which are two really important issues to our community, you don't have to go and do the education because you have individuals that have actually had their families go through, the genocide. They have survivors, and they really are understanding of the importance of the region and the conflict between Azerbaijan and Artsakh. So, and are able to really lead that effort. And of course, Assembly Member Asatryan and Asatryan are not the only ones. We have a lot of friends within both the Assembly and Senate. And of course, especially now, as this year, we're trying to expand the curriculum framework as it pertains to the Armenian Genocide. And there's a story that a lot of Americans don't know, which is probably the proudest chapter in American history, where during the Armenian Genocide, over a 15-year period, the American government and the American people actually raised $117 million, saved over 1 million refugees and over 132,000 orphans during the Armenian Genocide. This is perhaps the largest humanitarian effort to date, and yet it's not taught about in American history classes.
I do want to talk about the Armenian Genocide. We just remembered its 100th anniversary, and as a Jewish American, I'm very attuned to the Armenian Genocide. I actually feel myself getting a little emotional when I talk about it, because we all know what Hitler said.
Right.
And he said, "Who remembers the Armenians?"
Of course.
And that gave him license to slaughter 6 million Jews and others, gypsies and others. But let's reflect, because with regard to the Jewish genocide, there are folks still alive that survived the Holocaust. With the Armenian genocide, I don't. Maybe
we have
a couple,
we still
but babies.
have
But babies, they were babies.
Correct.
And so, talk to me about last year and the remembrance and what it meant to the community.
I mean, we made history, of course, in Los Angeles, having organized a march for justice that brought over 166,000 people onto the streets of Los Angeles, and that theme was really throughout the world, and it didn't begin or end with the Armenian community, and I think that was the beauty of last year, and we hope that as years go by, we continue to build on that collaboration, that it really was human rights activists from throughout the world that had joined in this movement against denial of a genocide and murder of 1.5 million people.
And that is what's interesting about comparing the Jewish Holocaust and the Armenian Genocide, because while there are folks that try to deny the Jewish Holocaust, the Armenian Genocide, I mean, there are folks that try to still say, and I don't want to take a position, but look, history is history, and there are folks that still try to deny the genocidal intent.
Of course,
in 1915,
and especially now with what's happening in ISIS and Turkey and their positioning on this, it's really incredible that our government is really not taking the stance that it really needs to take.
And how does that make you feel, that even though folks like Adam Schiff, Congressmember Adam Schiff, who represents Glendale, as example, which has the largest Armenian diaspora outside of Armenia, that you have an ally there that's trying to get this government to get Turkey to admit that this was a genocide. Look, it's 100 years later.
Right. Well, they haven't. I mean, again, we have many friends in Congress as well. But even President Obama, when he was a senator, he spoke very demanding about the justice that has gone undone during the Armenian Genocide and on the Armenian Genocide. But when he got elected to being president, all those promises just went out the window.
So let's talk about you. I presume that you are a descendant of survivors of the genocide.
I am.
And so, if you don't mind, talk to me about how you feel 100 years later about this genocide, and that you, think about it, you are here today, you are living in California, you are the executive director of the Armenian National Committee of America. If your relatives could only know what you're doing, how does that make you feel?
Well, that's actually a very interesting point you brought up, because growing up, the Armenian Genocide was not something that was talked about.
Yeah, you grew up in Soviet Armenia.
I grew up in Soviet Armenia, and even when we came to the States, I actually found out very much later about how my great-grandmother was actually one of the only survivors in her family. She was actually one of the orphans that was saved by the Near East Relief. So, having not been exposed to that at an early age, I think puts me in a very different position, where I do feel that we each have an obligation, and not just Armenians, but as Americans, to continue on what effort the United States actually started in 1915. So.
Her name is Elen Asatryan. She is the executive director of the Armenian National Committee of America. She, on the Western region. She joins us from the California Democratic Party Convention in San Jose. My name is Brad Pomerance. Thank you so much for joining us on Charter Local Edition.